And I'm very proud to introduce my colleague, David Ross. David is the co-owner of the World School of Massage and Holistic Healing Arts in San Francisco, California, and also out in the East Bay of Oakland. And his professional background is in business, psychology, theology, education, and health care. David teaches many courses. We have 56 courses at the World School, and teaches seminars on attraction and manifestation. And these focus primarily on the subjects of entrepreneurship, holistic health, and personal transformation. What I want to say personally about David Ross, because I know him and work with him well on a regular basis, is that not only is he masterful at manifestation, intention, and the law of attraction, but that he's very skillful and very empathic and able to support individuals, groups, and families, people to go into the emotions and the stories and distinguish themselves from the emotions and the stories that have kept them from the strong intentions and manifestations that they've wanted to create in life. So he's a very skillful empath and healer, and you're in for a treat today. A lot of what he's going to be talking about today is part of our Great Life program and part of a weekend called the Great Weekend. What's it called?
The Great Weekend.
Yeah. So I am proud and absolutely touched to introduce to you someone that you'll definitely love forever after being with him today. This is David Ross.
Thank you. So who here is here because you're wanting to create your life far more deliberately and proactively than you are at this point in time? Great. And who here is here because you're open simply to having a whole lot more joy and passion in your life? Thank you. And who is here because you're wanting to learn how to attract your dreams far more quickly than you are at this time? Thank you.
The light's right on your face. We'll move a little to the left. Yeah.
And who here has absolutely no idea why you're here in this room right now? Raise your hand. And who here is beginning to have real second thoughts about the fact that you are here in this room right now? Thank you. We have one or two honest people back there. And who here is still waiting to hear something from David Ross worth laughing about? Raise your hand. So when this voice comes out, this accent comes out, it really means that David's alter ego is speaking, and David unleashes his alter ego when he's too scared to say certain things. So as his alter ego, I'm going to be telling you the ground rules for our work together today. Who's open to hearing the ground rules? Thank you. I'd like to ask that everyone hold their questions for the first 30 minutes of this program. Unbeknownst to you, David is neurotically overprepared and is attempting to cram 30 hours of program into 30 minutes. So do be prepared to take a sip out of a fire hose. Another request, would you please stop trying to think about everything David is saying? Thinking often gets in the way of learning. We recommend that you try to just notice the thoughts that are floating in and out. You might find that there's something actually original there if you stop thinking so much. If David says something that sets you off in some sort of tizzy, please remember that it's only your mind chatter judging Mr. Ross. You might do something like soothe yourself at that moment by saying something like, I've got my whole life to get over this issue. David has noticed that one of the many favorite mind chatter phrases that people bring to workshops are things like, I've already heard this before. How many times have I heard this before? Or one of my favorites that I like to say to David all the time, Thank you, Captain Redundant. How many times have I heard this one before? If this does happen to you, we invite you to create a happy delusion for yourself and try to remind yourself, or just begin to think, that this is the very first time you've heard anything. So, now that David's back, we're here to remind each other today that of something that you've always known, and that is that with respect to anything you want, and with respect to every way you've wanted to be in your life, there's absolutely nothing more important than your thoughts and your emotions on that topic. We're here to remind each other that the most important discussion being had on planet Earth right now is your willingness to allow the joy and the passion that's been knocking on your door to fly in great abundance. Why? Because we know that as you take care of yourself, as you allow joy to come in, the world around you transforms, and joy and gratitude and all those things we search for becomes available to you. How many folks are following me so far? Great, thank you. The problem is that many of the people who understand how manifestation and attraction works aren't really clear on the importance of having a preponderance of joy and passion in your life, in their lives. And yet still others know this and are unable to make the shift to actually allowing themselves to live with a preponderance of joy and gratitude and peace in their lives. How many understand what I'm speaking of? Thank you. And perhaps the great tragedy here is that there's so many people walking around who understand how attraction manifestation works, but their lives are absolutely filled with immense amounts of stress. And they're so used to the stress that they're really unclear that they're even having stress. How many understand what I'm speaking of? And another problem that we face in terms of education on the subject is that a whole lot of people have a whole lot of mind chatter, negative thoughts, etc., about allowing a large amount of joy and passion and laughter in their lives. How many people understand what I say what I mean when I say that? Thank you. And what we've noticed in working with students over the years is that some of the mind chatter goes like this. I don't deserve to have as much joy as this guy's talking about today. Or, if I allow myself to have that much joy, and listen up, if I allow myself to have that much joy, people won't be able to relate to me. I won't be able to be close to the people that I love anymore. How many have heard that one before? Another one is the mind chatter will say, look, if you try to be happy, it's always going to be inauthentic, so don't try to be happy. And this has given birth to a whole lot of cynicism in our world today. And another piece of mind chatter that often comes up for people is that if I have too much joy, I won't be able to experience any more pain, and I won't have the pain from which to grow. But I want to promise each and every one of you, pain is not going to go away. It will be here with you for the rest of your life. And we know that because the mind chatter tends to stay with us. So you can let go of that one right now. In fact, perhaps the greatest takeaway that you could have from our time together today is to begin to write down any thoughts that you have, your mind chatter, that might in some way be keeping you from allowing a massive abundance of joy and passion in your life. Who here is willing to begin to actually track those thoughts right now rather than just sit here passively in this workshop? Cool. Thank you. So today, we're going to show you why it is so important to the subject of manifestation and attraction, and doing it rapidly, that you allow a lot of joy and gratitude in your life. We're also going to look right now at the incentive systems that we have in our beautiful human body that are telling us about its preferences in the way we think and feel. And then we're going to look briefly at the end of at the completion of our time together at what you can do to allow as much joy and passion in your life as possible. Who here is still clear that that is why you're here and that's what you're going to create more of yourself for during our time together? Cool. When I speak of the term attraction and manifestation, I'm using a general term that is synonymous with other terms like the power of the mind, the law of attraction, the secret, the power of positive thinking, and now some areas that we're beginning to see emerge in the field of psychology, such as learned optimism and positive psychology. Whenever I speak of happiness and joy, I am always speaking of authentic happiness and joy, not the stuff we paste over our pain in order to avoid pain. Because what we want to be clear on with you here is that the reason that people have pain that persists in terms of their emotions is that they don't know how to get the message from the pain and then move on. Instead, most people have been plastering over their pain because they don't know how to interpret it and therefore live life in pain avoidance. What we're going to give you is access to the possibility of identifying what the learning is and then moving on as quickly as possible. And when I say attraction, I'm speaking of the idea that whatever we think about, we become. Or whatever we predominantly focus our thoughts upon, we begin to manifest in our experience. Any questions so far on this particular topic, just for clarifying what I've said? Okay, great. Let's continue. We'd like you to consider that your emotions are actually a communication system to you. How many have always known that to some degree in some way for yourselves? Thank you. What we want you to consider is that the possibility that emotions are actually part of your incentive system within your human experience that's giving you access to some sort of guidance or clarity of thought. Cameron, you still with me? Yeah. So, near the top here, I have a continuum of emotions. You can see that on the left side, we have those emotions that human beings are predominantly trying to avoid. And on the right side, we have a whole category of emotions, what we call the enjoyable emotions, that people are continuously attempting to move towards. In fact, some people in the field of psychology would suggest that all human behavior is based on the belief by the individual at some level that by doing or having something or being some way, that they will have less of the emotions that are on the left side and or more on the right side. You get it? Still with me? Raise your hand if you're still with me. Okay, great. What we're noticing is that there seems to be a correlation between the quality of thoughts that you're having and the kind of emotions you're having as well. How many already know that pretty well? And what we know is that we're on the left, and I'm going to call these emotions over here left bank emotions and left bank thoughts, and over here thoughts and emotions that are on the right bank. And we know is that when people are on the left bank, that is, that when they're having thoughts of mind chatter, the self-critical talk, that's when they end up with emotions like this. When people are having also what we call stress response thoughts, more mind chatter, these are the emotions that are always corresponding to those kinds of thoughts. On this side of the spectrum, people are less conscious and aware of choice in any given moment, and more conscious of choice when they're on this side. So for instance, when you're having a flat tire and they're complaining about it, you're less aware of the opportunities or the ways of fixing the tire than when you've let go of the complaint and are actually able to think about it from a state of ease and grace. And then of course on the right side, we have more positive thinking, which is the antithesis of the chatter. Now, here's where it gets really, really, really fun. Notice the physiological responses that have been tied to uncomfortable emotions. Now, look at the ones that have been associated with the emotions on the right side. Is there anyone here who would be willing to tell me the basic relationship that you notice? Yeah, it's the opposite. Exactly. Is it possible, listen up, is it possible that your body is attempting to communicate something to you here? Is it possible that your body and or something else is attempting to communicate a preference to you? Don't answer that. Just consider it for now. We also know that, thank goodness for the folks at HeartMath Institute. How many have heard of HeartMath? Okay. What the folks at HeartMath have been doing is they've actually they found this rhythm within the heartbeat that when it is tracked, they've been able to find an amazing relationship between the quality of that rhythm and optimum human performance of every kind. And what you see on this uppermost band is that rhythm represented within the heart rate when someone's feeling frustrated. And below you can see what's happening when someone is feeling appreciation. We move into a smooth sine wave pattern, and it's at that moment that the brain and the heart synchronizes, and the entire human body moves into this fully, amazingly coherent space, and it is in that point that your electromagnetic field begins to affect most profoundly the electromagnetic fields of those around you. So much so that if you're in an enjoyable, gratitude-filled space and you're creating this rhythm within your heart, it can actually create, for those who walk into your field within about 2 feet, their hearts can begin to synchronize with this. How cool is that? Is it possible that your body has been trying to communicate something with you all along? So a few years ago I began to figure, well, if this is true about this physiological stuff, and certainly we know that stress has been linked to a lot of diseases. How many of you are already aware of that? And we know that they're not necessarily causal links. We just see a relationship between the stress and the manifestation of disease. let's look together at the types of diseases that are most commonly associated with stress. Just look at them lightly. Now, this is where it gets really, really cool. Did you know that there have been all sorts of studies now in which people who have these very diseases and who actually practice things like relaxation and conscious gratitude, not only are they able to reverse, not only rather are they able to arrest the disease, they're able to actually reverse the very disease that the stress has caused. Do you get the implication here? Is it possible? Is it possible that your body has been trying to communicate something to you all along? Now, is anyone here willing to tell me the relationship you see between the diseases? I just want to make sure this is blindingly obvious.
Opposite.
Thank you. It's opposite. So this is just a summary slide I wanted you to look at. When people are over on the left bank, that is where painful emotions occur, where mind chatter is so prevalent, this is where the biochemistry of disease occurs within your body. I like to think of myself when I'm in a state of gratitude as creating the optimum biochemistry in my body. Victoras Kulvinskas was talking about the hormones of joy. Well, the hormones of joy are powerful, powerful forces in the human experience. And I don't want to go through this whole list right now, but I hope you're beginning to see that there are a tremendous number of reasons or ways in which the body is attempting to communicate with you. Its preferences. Who here is willing to be open to your body's communications with you about its preferences? Oh, excellent. And can we have some more light up here now? Room monitor. So, I'd like to summarize. So the secret of rapid manifestation has been something our bodies have been attempting to communicate to us for quite some time. The secret is in allowing yourself to have a preponderance of joy. And when I say joy, I'm speaking about all enjoyable emotions. You with me? And how else is it that we know this? Well, there have been a few teachers over the years who have been attempting to communicate this to us, yes? I've had a lot of fun recently just reflecting on the teachings of Jesus in the New Testament on the subject. And if you consider that Jesus was speaking of the ways of thinking and the ways of being that would create optimum attraction and manifestation, you'll find, states of optimum attraction and manifestation, you'll find that his teachings, the request that we let go of our resentments and our judgments of other people, that we let go of resistance, left bank, and that we become peacemakers, right bank, on and on and on. Jesus taught about attraction and manifestation to an astounding degree in the New Testament. We also know it because the Dalai Lama is always talking about what? Be happy. Just be joyful. It's why Joseph Campbell said, follow your bliss. because he understood, and he had studied all these religions, he understood that if you allow yourself to follow your passion, the amount of time, actual time, that you can have in enjoyable emotional states can be massive. And when you're doing a job that you hate, the amount of time that you can be conversely living in stress is what?
Always.
It's massive. Are you beginning to see the relationship? Another teacher, powerful teacher on this subject was Napoleon Hill. He wrote the book Think and Grow Rich after the urging of Andrew Carnegie. He wrote it back in the 30s. It's the watershed event in terms of in the modern era of understanding how attraction and manifestation works. And if you look at his writings, all this is right in there. It's filled. And now I'm going to read a couple quotes from my favorite authors on the subject. It's Jerry and Esther Hicks. How many have read the works or listened to the works of Jerry and Esther Hicks before? Okay, great. I'm a big fan. If we were standing in your shoes, a day would not go by that we did not make a list of positive aspects of ourselves and of those who mean the most to us in terms of daily interaction. A day would not go by that we would not count our blessings and name them continuously, expressing them in every way we could, for in that day-to-day, moment-to-moment, deliberate acknowledgement, you bring yourself in alignment with how you really feel about you. And how you really feel about you is abject adoration. Are you willing to let that in? That's not part of the quote. And if you ever feel anything less about you or about anyone, you are not being you. You came here to let it in. Each of you has that place in your heart, that loving place. Are you willing to give yourself access to it more and more every day? And another quote from Esther Hicks, if you had one goal and that was to feel good, you would never again need to hear another word from anyone. You would live successfully and happily and in a way of fulfilling your life's purpose ever after. Woo! It's time for questions. I'm going to take one or two right now. There's more. Yes?
Are you proposing not feeling all your feelings, or just, how exactly is sort of avoiding what you're calling the left bank emotions?
Thank you. Yeah, the question was, am I proposing today that we avoid uncomfortable feelings? Is that accurate? Is that a fair representation of the question? And what we're saying is absolutely not. What we're saying is that when we attempt to change, or when we attempt to avoid uncomfortable emotions through addiction or whatever process like that, we actually diminish our access to the message of the emotion. And the message of the emotion is to wake up, check in. There's something valuable to look at. But here's the problem. A lot of people are trying to plaster over the uncomfortable feelings with things like affirmations. They feel the uncomfortable feeling and they're up in their head going, oh, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me. And the problem there is they miss the message of the emotions. They miss the learning. And I don't have the time, unfortunately, to go into how to interpret the message. because there is amazing, astounding learning available to you. And when you get access to that, what's possible is to just spend a lot less time on the left bank. What's possible is to just get the learning and move on. You don't have to suffer indefinitely in order to get the learning. You can get the learning quickly and move on. So what we're saying here is not to avoid uncomfortable emotions, but rather to become tuned into your body, where what occurs? Emotions, right? So that you can notice when you're feeling uncomfortable at an early stage before it starts building up mind chatter after mind chatter after mind chatter until you're exploding, and it takes you 2 weeks to come back to earth. Get the learning and then move on. What we're saying here then is that we're just asking a question. Are you willing to allow yourself to continuously experience more and more joy and live in alignment with that passion that burns within you on a day-to-day basis? Are you willing to actually make whatever change you need to occur to allow the priority of your wellness, your well-being, your joy to be the driving priority of your life? And I'll stop right there. I had another question up here. Thank you, David. Yes.
Well, I say pretty positive most of the time, but I can slip over there. I think most people, all of a sudden, you're on the left bank. So I just wondered if you had a method for catching it or preventing it quicker,
Yeah.
when you slip over.
So Joel had a great question here, and please correct me as I repeat this. He was saying that what he notices sometimes is that all of a sudden he's slipping over onto the left bank. It appears like out of nowhere. Boom. He's on the left bank. And is there something that we would recommend to make that shift more quickly? Is that an accurate representation?
Catch it or prevent it.
Catch it or prevent it, okay?
Yeah.
And I love this question because we have 300 hours of curriculum at our school to help with this issue, okay? I'd like to suggest that fundamentally, when you move quickly over onto the left bank, it's because you haven't been aware of the negativity and you've had a low level of stuff building up over time. So when you move from what we call monkey mind into Kong mind, you guys know that place, it's because there's been a slipping that occurs. So the key is to learn to develop the facility to catch it early on. And guess where that facility lies? Anyone? In your body. And what is your body attempting to communicate to you? A message. And the message is to wake up. Wake up. You've been in your unconscious. It's time to wake up. You have choice right now if you're willing to just be awake enough to listen, to get the learning, and move on.
Are you saying that the body can be a clue that you're slipping over?
I'm saying that the body is a communication system. It's not just providing clues. It is your primary communication system. Now, don't believe what I'm saying, okay? Don't go home and just start believing this. I want you to play with it, test it out. Allow yourself to learn this on your own. Don't do it because somebody up front at a talk says anything. Take it home, play with it. Just a second here, Beverly. There was a question back here? Yeah.
When one becomes tense or uptight, so to speak, that's an indication that your body, that something's not right too, wouldn't you say? Unless your body communicating with you?
I would say that that's exactly what I've been speaking about today. Yeah. She was asking, when the body is becoming tense, is that possibly part of this communication? Yes? And what I'm saying is that very often tension in your body is a reflection of ongoing, unacknowledged, unrecognized emotions that have been crawling around there for a little while. Get it? So Often it's a late stage thing. At other times, you might be feeling tension right here where your enteric brain is and all those neurons are firing off around here that we often label emotions. So it could be many different things. But what we're saying here is do whatever you can to connect with your body. Do it through massage, do it through yoga, do it through meditation that has you becoming aware of your body, not going away, getting out of your body. Do whatever it takes to become aware of your body. And then begin to notice the emotions as well. You know, when I went into psychotherapy back in the early 80s, I remember all of the psychotherapists would ask me was, so what's the feeling, David? You know, I must have heard that 10,000 times. That was the only question he asked. I was paying him a lot of money for just asking me one question. But it was a perfect question for me because I was a recovering nerd. Actually, I was a nerd at that time. And what I had done in order to manage my pain growing up, because I was very sensitive and empathetic, was I went up into my head, trying to turn myself off from all this rich communication that my body had been giving me all along. So yes, get into your body. Now I'm going to ask us to hold questions. Beverly, I saw your hand. Just for a moment, because I have a few things I want to discuss. So let's go into the how-tos for a minute. First, 1, are you willing to intend to live a life in which you're actually experiencing a predominance of joy, a predominance of being on the right bank? Okay, okay. Now here, I saw some mind chatter flying off there, okay? I saw it started coming up above some of your heads. What I want you to do now is write down any negative thoughts about that. Those are the jewels. Those are the things that are operating in the background that are limiting you from having all the joy you've been asking for. If you could take that away from this time together, it would be the most amazingly astounding thing. Just for you to become aware of what that specific pattern is within you that's been limiting you and keeping you from having an abundance of joy. So hang on, I've got a couple more things. So, next, decrease the amount of time you spend on the left bank. And there are a couple things I'd recommend. 1, how many people here have heard of nonviolent communication and Marshall Rosenberg? The way of being that they recommend in this system of communication is the most powerful and profound system that's been around on planet Earth in the modern era. It is phenomenal. So begin to explore nvc.org. That's N as in Nancy, V as in Victor, C as in Charlie.org. And it takes practice. Also, Patricia alluded to a course that we have called The Great Weekend. And it's the first introductory weekend that the World School created. We tested it for about 4 years because this is our first course for the general public on the subject of attraction manifestation. And, you know, I'm a quality improvement. I have a quality improvement background, so I'm fanatically, you know, I take way too long to develop things. 4 years for one class. But the cool news is that the people who are taking it now are giving us reviews that I had no conception that we'd ever actually see. And in fact, so that course has a phenomenal number of tools that you can use. And I wanted to make a brief announcement about that. We value the course at around $1,295 because we're just completing the first stage of its giving it to the public, where we've been offering it for $100 just for testing, and we're coming to completing that phase. What we're doing here this weekend is, if you actually leave us your name and email address and check off the box that says Free Great Weekend, we hold them in the San Francisco Bay Area, you'll actually get to attend that for free. Who here is open to attending that? Okay, great. And I'm sad right now for my friends from Florida. Actually, we've got people from Florida raising their hands. Isn't that awesome? So next, stay with me. Learn to tune into your emotions. And there's a great book on that subject entitled The Astonishing Power of Emotions by Jerry and Esther Hicks, Hicks, at abraham-hicks.com. And the best thing that I've ever seen is The Great Weekend. Next, learn to distinguish your conscious thoughts from your mind chatter. If you don't know if you can't recognize your mind chatter, people are unable to actually distinguish which are their thoughts, the loving, kind, giving thoughts, and the negativity. And a great book to give you a start on that is The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. However, I have never seen a course that does a better job of explaining how it works than The Great Weekend. You understand that we developed this course because there are all these holes in the literature. There are all these holes in how to do this. Next, get clear on your life purpose and allow yourself to have it. Why? Because it changes the amount of what? It changes the amount of time that you spend in the mind chatter. It allows you to spend large chunks of time in spaces of joy and appreciation, etc. And that, my friends, is the most important biochemistry for your health that you could possibly have. Also, there's I just was passed a message that there's a nonviolent communication intro in the San Francisco Bay Area, September 25, 26, and 27. Oh, at our school, at the World School. Woo! We have 56 courses at the school. Okay. One way that you can tune in to what your life purpose is just simply to get out of, if you're not clear already, I know some of you already are, just begin writing down what you think might be your purpose. Start a list. And keep doing that list until you find something that you start crying about. Or something that when you think about it, causes you to just basically raise out of your chair. When you found that, that's something worth exploring. Oh yes. And then, of course, we do address that in some of our more advanced curriculum in the Great Life program, which is part of what the Great Weekend is part of. And then finally, and this has been a piece that people have really underestimated for a long time. Old habits are sometimes challenging to change, aren't they? Raise your hand if you know what I mean. Okay, now, I got more hands on that than any other question I've asked today. The most profound way to create new habits is to stop being alone. Get out of your frickin' home office. Find other people who are seeking the same thing you want and just be with them. I had a guy call me the other day, and I have students that call me in crisis. I'm one of their crisis guys that they go to. And he said, David, I just needed to talk to you. And I said, okay, what is it? What is it? Talk to me. And he said, oh, I'm sorry, I just needed to hear your voice. That was all I needed. And I'm using that just as an example. We are designed for community. The community is designed to enhance and support us in our ability to create our own reality because we are conscious, deliberate creators. That's why you yearn for community, and that's why your mind chatter, listen up, that's why mind chatter, so much of it is aimed at creating separation between people. That's what the judgments are all about. It's about separation. And in the world of joy, there isn't. Yes? Oh yeah. One other thing. Patricia, I'm laughing right now because our offering this to you guys is outrageous. We know that we're going to catch heck when we return to staff on Monday or Tuesday. But Patricia wanted to also mention that you'll be able to bring a guest with you to the Great Weekend, whoever signs up, whoever checks off that box. And we do that because we're done with having workshops and things like that that end and leave people back in the same place or worse than they were before. There's something that just ain't right about that, if you know what I mean. So we need community, and that's why we do that. In fact, many of the tools that we provide you in the Great Weekend are actually designed for you to actually hand to people you love so that they can learn it with you, or so that you can learn to teach it to other people so that you can build a community around you. In fact, just so that you know that this isn't just some schlocky thing that we put together, we literally have, when we do our quality improvement reports, typically people say that it is one of, if not the most powerful workshop they've ever attended. And we've even, in fact, recently we had a 70-year-old woman get up and say, "This was the most fantastic experience of my entire life." So it's time for questions. I've got about 2 more minutes. I had 2 hands from a while, 3 hands from a while ago, David, Beverly, and Patricia. Patricia is the most animated right now, and I'm sure she has something to have me to pass on. Yes?
Tell them that they're going to get this brochure emailed to them with dates into next year.
Okay, so we hold this at regular intervals, and we'll be sending you information on it that you'll be able to hang your hat on a little bit better. Okay? Now, by the way, where is that sheet right now? Okay, so just keep it going. And I'm thinking that what we're going to need to do when we call time is to have it downstairs in the right next to the grab-and-go table where the authors sign books. I'll be there, and we'll be facilitating that. Okay, now 2 outstanding questions. David, you were first. Are you complete with your question at this stage?
No, I think it's still appropriate. But I would like to see an example of something in your life that you did that and your process, how you did that when you're talking about shifting to positive. You know, like when you're back talking about do something, do the meditation, do the breathing. How you recognized it, what your process was like.
Okay. In our courses, we teach many different processes for you to do that. And the reason I started smiling is I remembered I used to consult for Living Light many years ago. And there was a time in which I was actually making a presentation, and I said something that set someone off. Okay? And she started attacking me as I was making the presentation. And of course, at that moment, my mind chatter goes off, things like, and I haven't heard this in a while, but it was like, "No one says this to me and gets away with it." I'm going to show her, and I'm going to show her good. Okay? And then I was able to noticed the tension in my body, and I had the intention to be tuned into my emotions. So at that moment, what I did is I started to give myself some empathy. Okay, David, you're going to get through this. She's not actually attacking you. It's just whatever's up for her. And I was breathing and just giving myself empathy. And then what I did is I literally began to shift into identifying what her needs might be in that moment, considering her needs, which took my mind off of guess who? Moi. And found the peace inside only to notice that as soon as I did that, the person who was attacking me had this, experience. And she absolutely, totally forgot what she was talking about.
You basically did classic NVC.
In that case, I did classic NVC. And I do different things for myself at different moments. But this is why, that's an example of nonviolent communication where we look to other people's needs. Now, it's time, I actually have to complete right now. I'm getting the hook. So I want to just ask, who here is still completely committed in your life to allowing yourself an absolute abundance of joy and gratitude in your life?
Yes.
So I want you, if that is the case, I'd like you just to stand right now and say, I am or I will, just that. I am. Woo! Thank you, everybody.